Tom, I'm looking forward to this session. I've actually have my coffee in hand. I know you do too. And to have a great conversation about the telecom industry and about what EY Ernst Young is working on. I constantly see this theme of resiliency, which we love, actually we latch on quite a bit. And we'd love to hear in your own words as to how Ernst Young is helping the telcos run more resilient networks.
Yeah. So indeed, resiliency is an important theme, has been for us for a long time, right? You know, being prepared for the unexpected, and of course with the whole COVID-19, that sort of got an extra boost because that was something which was, really unexpected. I would say, that you could divide it into sort of two things that we really focus on. One is really the people aspect. You could think about, things like, hey, how do you keep your employees safe? Although most companies actually figured that out pretty well early on themselves. But there is also many elements like, people who work offshore for you, who are now actually going to have to work from home, with different facilities, maybe not necessarily immediately the right security setups, at times even contractual obligations to only provide services offshore, when you're actually in the office, or people who, decided to take a furlough. How would that work? So we've been working on many sort of contractual legal elements of the people side, and increasingly so now also working on, hey, how do you get to the right balance of working from home and working from the office? Quite a few people found that working remotely wasn't all bad. It led sometimes to productivity increases, to actually people, feeling, that they could perform better by not always having to rush every day to the office and then back again. But at the same time, right, there is benefits in meeting up. So one area where we've really worked with clients is on the people aspect of side, and then all the different angles that I just spoke about. The other one is more around, I would say, decision making around your infrastructure. Typically, how decision making around infrastructure is being done is a little bit longer cycles. Whilst COVID really was also a wake up to say, oh well, we see the shift from upload becoming much more important than download. Should we be providing different kind of services? If you're gonna run all kind of important meeting sessions remotely, what do we do with security? We saw the fact that you can provide a great speed to a home, but if the speed is all optimized through Wi-Fi for one or two rooms and the other rooms have nothing, then the 2 megabit per second is maybe not so helpful. So how do you deal with actually giving everybody a good connection in the home? So there's different terms to resilience, and then we go even a bit further into the network in terms of, hey, how do you make sure that you optimize the traffic streams and do that on an almost hourly to hourly basis? We typically do that with partners, right? There is a certain amount of expertise we have in that space, but definitely if you go deep into the networks, we work with others. So I would say, people side of things, more technical side of things, and technical on the one hand being, really focused on networks and how they behave, but also networks and how they get consumed and perceived by consumers and enterprises in the space where they work, either remotely or in the office. So, being quite engaged on all those different topics.
Well, very interesting. I think we can dissect it into two, talking a bit about the network, but also talking about the people and the culture aspect.
Yeah.
So just to start more on the people and culture aspect of it, I'm one of those who are optimistic about the future of telcos. I know we've, over the last 2 decades working with telcos, built multiple companies serving the telco industry. There was always these negative voices saying that the telcos business, will be redundant, or they will become a dump pipe or whatever.
Yeah.
I still believe that the telcos are sitting on tremendous assets. In terms, for example, there's $1.5 trillion of assets out there, but they're also sitting on tremendous knowledge. A lot of subject matter experts that they know their data better than anybody else. And in some ways, I feel that the telcos sell themselves short compared to the web scale companies and the Silicon Valley type of startups. That the telcos are also doing some very interesting things in the cloud, in artificial intelligence, the scale at which you can work on, in telcos is very gratifying, even for a fresh grad or somebody early in their career.
Yeah.
So, but one thing, Tom, I'm writing on a blog also about the identity of telcos. Where do they stand on the topic of, let's say, innovation? I've noticed you ask a bunch of telcos and you get different answers. Some, they see their business as, I outsource the network to an OEM, for example, who will manage my network. And my job as a telco to do marketing, customer care.
Yeah.
Others actually are going to the other extreme of trying to insource as much as possible and going back into a machine of innovation. I want to start there, have a conversation with you from what you're seeing out there in the industry. Are these things you look at in Ernst & Young in the advisory practice, how you align the organization, the culture, how can you get back into an innovation mode? I think that one thing I do actually end my blog with is nobody can afford walking away from innovation. I think the telcos are in need of innovation more than any other time. And I think we saw in the COVID and the pandemic is the unpredictable nature of their network, about how much growth they have seen the traffic unexpectedly. So it's back to the resiliency also. So any comments from your practice working with many telcos around the world as to how you're working to align culture and organization to foster further innovation?
Yeah, no, sure. And this is a massive topic, Ned, and probably a bit like you, right? I've sort of built my professional career within telcos, so it has given me a lot, and I'm doing this work because I like it, and anything I can do to help this industry prosper, right, is really important to me. I think indeed the good thing of COVID, if we can put it that way, right? Let's say good between quotes, is that I think telcos have done really, really well by being there for their clients, trying to help, whether it was through free text messaging or sort of unlimiting the bundle so people could just be in touch with each other, be generous to small medium enterprises who are maybe in trouble. So done a lot of things right whilst they were actually dealing with this massive change in traffic, not just more data being consumed, but also much more upload, different times of the day, and yeah, that here and there there was maybe some impacts, but I think they've done it tremendously well. And so from the research that we did, it also showed that appreciation of consumers of telcos was highest if you compare with social media companies or maybe cable TV companies, IT software provider, which isn't always the case. Actually, typically they're quite a bit lower. So then, to your point of innovation, right? I believe like you, there is tremendous value in the fact that each of these telcos, whether it's maybe smaller players in smaller countries or bigger players in bigger countries, they have, at least in the area where they work, they have massive amounts of people that they serve and that have been a client to them and that have probably been a loyal client to them for years. They have a billing relationship with them, where automatically they get paid for the services in many instances. They are approachable through their online mobile app, call center. So there is a large community that trust them and that they do business with, and that they can provide services and charge for those services. And so I think there is a tremendous opportunity also to build on that. One of the things which of course has come up, and I know some telcos are more actively working in that space than others, is the whole element of remote healthcare. Right, in the COVID period, no patient wants to go to a doctor, and actually a doctor probably also rather doesn't need a patient. And with the techniques that we have these days, right, remote consults, remote measurements, and helping people who actually feel they have maybe a health issue is a tremendous opportunity. Should they necessarily be having these remote doctors employed themselves? I don't think so. But using their capabilities, everything which is in place, their customer base, the trust that they have, I think is a tremendous opportunity. To your point about in innovation, maybe also a little bit more in the technical side or on the technology side of things, I would agree with you, and it's not for nothing that I spent, large time of my life, professional life in telco. Is there is great opportunities to work there, and it feels like, with the position that they had or created during the whole last 6 months, there's probably much more acknowledgement, recognition with people now getting into the to become potential candidates for working with them. That there is tremendous opportunities around AI, augmented reality, virtual reality. You could say sort of the cool stuff, but a lot of that cool stuff, analytics, is now already was a need for telcos. But I think they are an attractive employer to go. I think probably they should be more vocal around it in general. In some places, right, if I look more to the east, whether it's Korea or China, I think telcos typically very prominently take that role. I think in parts of Europe they're a bit more prudent, but also here I saw a nice announcement just a few hours ago of Disney and Vodafone now working together on a smartwatch for kids. Right, I love it. Right, that's they should go that way. Will it bring in the next 10 billion? Probably not. Should it? I don't think so. Home IoT is increasingly being rolled out in places. I think Italy is making really good strides in other places. So bit of a lengthy answer to your point, Ned, but yes, I do think telcos have become more attractive. I think secondly, telcos do have great capabilities to be the provider of services that they don't necessarily have to invent themselves, but they have a great audience, great trust level. And yeah, I probably think they do need to manifest themselves a little bit more, be more outspoken, that they aspire this position of bringing new things to clients, and that they're looking for companies to work with them to make that happen.
Yeah, I've seen it actually. Speaking of new revenue streams, I've seen it with the Canadian telco we've been working with. They've so far, they presented 2 at least new initiative, like health, for example, or data centers.
Yeah.
Each billion plus revenues. These add up, and those are like not native to telcos, but I think telcos are starting to diversify also in others. But speaking on innovation, I think that I've seen, of course, there's been attempt also of open source forums to foster innovation. Some initiatives have been successful, some there was not much contribution. But in general, that was, I think, generally speaking, a good attempt. It fits a bit into the category which I call collaborative innovation. I myself, having worked mostly with the large telcos, but also with some small ones. But in the large telcos, I realized it's very hard to force in innovation. And also, once again, they have phenomenal SMEs. I think clients have learned a lot from us, and we've learned a lot from clients, from working with the large ones. So the collaborative innovation is an approach I believe in a lot, now more than ever. And actually, in the way we have thought everything in our R&D has been about an open platform where even the telcos themselves could build some use cases themselves. So it's a mix of, you have your own catalog, telcos have their own catalog, sometimes the partners have their own catalog also. That has been an approach that works. But I want to share with you also, Tom, as of last week, actually, I was in Germany, and I met with a client, and we're talking about innovation. And in particular, the topic of automation came up. And it's interesting how, by the way, every telco I met with in Europe has talked about 30% on average OpEx reduction target that they have. Some up to 50%, some 15, 20%. But on average, I'd say it's about 30%. And in this case, this executive presented saying, look, if I lay off even half of my team, I would not even meet 1/8 of that target. So it reminded me that I think a lot of people think about automation innovation as a way to reduce staff, but that's actually a one dimension and has its limitation.
Yeah.
I think in what we do, and I like the work we do also, which probably, in a lot of cases, Ernst & Young is first doing assessments and advisory, and we come in a bit later, enabling a shift in operation model. That for me is what I'm most passionate about. It's not just about automating people's tasks, but about enabling a model that can scale. And a great example has been COVID. I think those that have invested into innovation, they have been able to weather the storm much more efficiently.
Yeah.
So that's what my passion is into automation. Any other thing that you're seeing from talking to telcos, and we have very interesting global exposure to most of the large telcos in the world. Anything that you've seen that is top priority or on the mind of telcos these days that Ernst & Young is helping them with?
Yeah, so so this whole topic of resilience, right? I spoke in the beginning about getting to call it a alert dashboard to help them optimize the decisions that they make on their investments. How do you not just from a technological point of view, but also in terms of organization wise, the decision making wise, how can you make fast decisions in your organization to do the things that you need to do? So we do quite a bit of work in that space. The other thing is really around 5G. Why would enterprises be interested to take that? We work with, ultimately the idea would be to say, hey, let's come up with end-to-end services for companies where they benefit from the low latency, where they benefit from the high speed. But that there's also this search, and we work with companies to say, instead of having an end-to-end solution, which probably you need to sort of tune for every different client, right? Is there sort of, call it half fabricates that you can create where you would put out the service around 5G, which would then directly compete with having Wi-Fi and cabling in a company, because you could say, well, through this 5G, you have guaranteed speeds, everywhere, or you sort of have a not just in terms of presence of the connection, but in terms of the minimum speed, you've got that guaranteed. So we're looking to see how that would work, with clients. Another one is, and we discussed quite a few times about this, and that is, how do you deploy your network? So once you've decided on how it would look like, how do you then actually go out, buy the stuff, get it into the right place, get it installed, get it functioning, get it tested, make sure that you understand where everything is, so that also later on you can maintain it, where the spare parts are, the whole thing of rolling it out effectively. We've been working quite extensively on that topic and see how we could optimize that. So those are a few things. Maybe a final thing is to say that also increasingly, and this was sort of accelerated through the through the COVID period, is indeed increasing investment in chatbots, digital channels, right? Everything that you can do to interact with a client without necessarily having to physically meet people or to have them on the phone. We do a lot of work in that space now to design how that journey, as we call it, how that should look like, and how you can get that implemented with the right tools and processes supporting it.
It's funny you mentioned deployment. It's something you and I have discussed as well.
Yes.
As a sister companies to B-Yond as well, is we're a lot into smart deployment. Again, in my trip in Germany, I met with another carrier, and by the way, the theme is always the same, which is deployment is costly and is too slow. And it's the CTO has told me the same thing. It's interesting, over the years, I mean, the hardware cost is a fraction to what it was before. The base stations, the equipment from the OEMs, but services is still as costly as before. So there's a phenomenal opportunity for the telcos to optimize that. And actually, that telco I met with, they were already moving from regional deployment leadership into more of an agile model. I know it's something I know quite a bit about the work Ernst & Young does in supply chain, processes optimization, and it also into a full systems automation of the entire deployment. But one thing
pretty classical process work, but now also indeed supported by analytics and automation, to further, speed up things. Yeah. Sorry, Nat, you were.
No, it just when you're talking about also the people aspects of the telcos, and it's a topic that Ernst & Young is very engaged in. But one thing also I'm very encouraged in is, I think the telcos, there's a clear indication that they are serious about innovation for two reasons. One, I see the buying cycles are much faster than they used to. I remember in the old days, we used to say a large telco in Europe, for instance, takes 5 years to make a decision on, an OEM vendor, let's say. But you can see right now they have accelerated a lot that decision-making process, and procurement has changed quite a bit. Yeah. But second, even also attempts by large telcos like Vodafone, for example, recently announced that they are paying small startups actually much faster in the COVID times because of an attempt to make sure that they depend also on that ecosystem of innovation. And with that, Tom, I would just go to switch back to the network resiliency. So now we talked about the culture, but on the network resiliency, I'm also, I like a lot the work that you guys are doing at Ernst & Young. You know, our vision is also aligned in the sense that we believe a network has to be constantly tested and constantly validated. It's actually the topic that, you know, tomorrow we have a webinar with our partners at Keysight, a $20 billion company, to talk about that topic as well, which is, it's a, you know, and COVID has showed that, you know, you want to be constantly testing. And back to the OpEx, you know, efficiencies. Also, I think traditionally the telcos took months and months, 4, 5, 6, 7 months to introduce a service, which is bad for the time to market and bad for the competitive edge. I think the acceleration of the introduce of service in weeks or days even has a huge opportunity for revenue generation and to maintain the competitive edge compared to web scale, for example. And also, I think we're working with one telco in the US. You might take a guess at, you know, one of the more advanced ones that believes in that, you know, lab testing should be minimal, maybe even non-existent. That you could, given especially right now, whether it's, you know, O-RAN, whether it's disaggregation of the network, whether it's using a multitude of vendors compared to before, there's no more the luxury of just saying, I'm going to test a lot in the labs. It's harder to predict the environment. Yeah. So it is a vision of continuous testing, continuous validation that we're very passionate about. I personally think this feeds into the vision of Ernst & Young to also make more resilient networks.
No, definitely, right? So I probably no need to elaborate a lot about it, Ned, but yes, you know, fully, and you know what you guys are able to do with, you know, the solutions that you provide, I think is exactly what it should be. It is continuously understanding, you know, what is the demand, what are the important things in there, how can we actually deal with that, how should the, you know, adjustments look like, and how can we, you know, once we actually make changes, test it. So I think, you know, it's super helpful, and it is indeed, you know, what we should probably jointly work on and further further help telcos also with.
Looking forward. Tom, any final closing remarks, whether it's about advices to the telcos or whether it's your final closing remarks about the amazing work that Ernst & Young is doing?
You know, Nada, and you touched upon it. No, I think, you know, the telcos over the past few months, they took decisions about big topics in probably days, maybe even hours, where normally they would, you know, take much more time, and I think it served them well. So I would, you know, say, you know, stay courageous, you know, continue, go forward. You know, I think they should be proud of, you know, what they did. And I think, you know, they should, you know, sort of continue to keep that courage, but now also use it to, you know, extend the services that they provide, you know, further move into the automation and that you were speaking to make things even, you know, move faster. And so I think there's tremendous opportunity, and yeah.
Yeah,
and from your end, Ned? Yeah,
on my end, I would tell you also, I'm very encouraged that, you know, what has been quite a bit of examples drawn the last year from, you know, cloud native networks popping up in especially out east. But I'm very, very encouraged by my latest, you know, trips and discussions with US carriers and European carriers. I'm seeing more and more the large telcos, the incumbents even, how serious they are about innovation. And there's some, of course, I can mention by name, but there's some, I've seen them at a light speed actually over the last 6 and 8 months. And they had an announcement today on LinkedIn, you can find it, about, you know, the amazing work they have done, you know, on O-RAN, they have done on cloudifying the network, and also on the foundation that laid out for automation, for all the stuff that we do in AI, machine learning, and automation in general. So I'm very encouraged. I told some of these, I said, you will make history by showing it's not the greenfield carriers only, but for the most of these large established and even incumbent carriers, there's a phenomenal opportunity to do a massive transformation at scale. And that gets my heart beating. I wish also the, you know, the best, of course, we depend on it and we've served it for many years.
Sounds good, Matt.
Great. I'll tell you cheers, and hopefully we'll continue transforming telcos together.
I'm looking forward to it, Ned.
Thank you,
There you
Tom.
go.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.